today I'll be presenting my investigation that's entitled The Dancing Face. So, the face as a central organ of sense is the best indicator of a person's emotions. Dr. Paul Ekman has done groundbreaking research on decoding the human face, supporting the view that emotions are discrete, measurable, and physiologically distinct. His most influential work revolved around the finding that certain emotions appear to be universally recognized. So even in cultures that were pre-literate and could not have learned associations for facial expressions through media, so as you can see, they've never been exposed to media, but the expressions are still the same with American people. So what is facial expression? When a person experiences an emotion, it can trigger an involuntary reaction expressed by changes in the facial muscles. These slight adjustments, in other words, objective signals in relative position of the facial features, are what make up an expression. The human face can actually make over 10,000 expressions, and so I'm interested in exploring how to negotiate the relationship between people's subjective experiences of emotion and the corresponding objective signals in their face through a choroidic perspective. The initial stages of my research began with recording the way people conveyed emotions through facial expression, gesture, posture, body design, and free improvisation. I was then going to analyze the gathered material in the manner of naming what I see. This was in search of answers to the questions I had as seen on this slide. So these questions. So since my first tutorial, however, I started questioning the authenticity of my materials, as there was no way I could objectively prove the true emotional state of my participants when they expressed themselves via the given instructions. Nevertheless, I was still invested in the notion that movement is the fulcrum between visible and invisible experience, between form and idea, between body and mind. This quote, when I discovered this quote, the concept of encoding and decoding really led me to start reversing my approach towards this investigation. So instead of trying to decode physical expressions of emotions into choroidic forms, I thought, why not encode these movements with established choroidic concepts to observe the resultant expressions suggested instead. So with that said, my investigation has shifted to become a study of microchoroidics, that is articulating the spatial content of movement within the kinesphere. In this case, predominantly the spatial content of facial movements. My presentation today is divided into two parts. So the former articulating where expression is recognized in the face, and secondly, the relations between facial movements and body language as means of expression. The style of my presentation will reflect upon Valerie Preston Dunlop's notion of the constantly ascending figure of 8 synthesis of theory and process, where theory informs process and process informs theory. The three main choroidic concepts that I would adopt in my methodology are as follows. And in this investigation, physical...
Did you just
should I say it out? So, locations and order of locations, types of pathways, and harmonic oppositions. The style of my presentation is that physical exploration will be executed by Trishula and Lorraine, which in turn would stimulate my understanding of the research and prompt further interrogation. This presentation would therefore include several live demonstrations by the girls, where standard orientation is maintained, besides verbal analysis of selected images gathered across the length of my research. The A scale is used as the primary vehicle for this study. You would have also noticed handouts that I've just provided that contain a fuller selection of images generated across the length of my research to give you just a better insight to my study. So, where is emotion recognized in the face? That's my first question. And I thought maybe in a location. So I thought is emotion within facial expressions akin to body design in the face, where it is recognized in stillness. And one of the first tasks I introduced to Trishula and Lorena was to use their faces to go to instructed locations. I kept the instruction vague, and the pictures you see on the first column of page 1 to 3 of the handout, just the first column, are the results of just the full, all 12 positions. But as you can see from the screen, which is the images I chose to highlight, there is a clear sense of positioning within the face across the images, just across all of those images. And some of them you can clearly associate to emotions. So for instance, in location 1, you could see it implies contempt, whereas in location 9, it does, such as fear. I've tried to just compare and contrast these locations, and what I find is there are actually similarities in expression across certain locations. So 1 and 10, 4 and 7, and that's within the door plane, and also 2, 11, and 5, 8 within the table plane, pretty much identical but reflected. And however, directly oppositional locations within the wheel plane do not produce the same expressions across all 4. And this is due to the bilateral symmetry of the face on the wheel plane, so just cut that side, where features are almost identical on the right and left half of your face. Inspired by this idea of facial house, I decided to explore the isolation of facial movements through the top and bottom facial house by establishing a table plane across the center of the face. I then got the girls to execute the same approach, so same instructions from before, but this time given restriction in the form of facial house. And so these are the resulting images that I've gotten. These are the ones that we saw before. And you could clearly see that they all do convey different emotions. It may be subtle, but they're all different. And this led to exploring the simultaneous placement of facial house in 2 different locations. So that would mean getting the girls to attempt location of harmonic opposition within the face. So for example, 2 in the top half and 8 in the bottom half. And I call this, I don't know if it's quoted right, but intrapersonal facial harmonic opposition.
Say it again.
It's an intrapersonal facial harmonic opposition. You can see here these are the results. And they can be seen on the 4th page of the handout as well, in comparison with interpersonal facial harmonic oppositions in the following page. So in page 5, it's just harmonic opposition across both people, and in page 4 is harmonic oppositions within themselves. And yeah, the clarity of expression in the images justifies the notion of facial expression being akin to body design, which is what I initially questioned. And it just simply exhibits the vast range of expressions that can be made by the face. This teases the potential of challenging our specificity level in deliberate facial movements. But I found this quote that says, you shouldn't just observe stillness, but also movement. And so I feel that I should consider the possibilities of facial expressions being akin to spatial progression as well, so emotion. And so I thought, can emotion be conveyed through an interval? And if so, would they carry the same or different meaning than the 2 endpoints of the interval? So to illustrate my discovery, I shall invite Krishula to demonstrate along the screen, containing the still locations of the interval that I've chosen. And so if you could just compare the images and the motion that she's going to do. So Krishula will now move her face from 4 to 12. And now from 12 to 4. So it can be seen that from the demonstration that the emotion conveyed within an interval, for me personally, it's the same with the emotion conveyed at the end location. So in this case, interval 4 to 12 conveys the same emotion with location 12 in stillness, whereas interval 12 and 4 conveys the same expression as location 4 in stillness. So now, what about the type of pathway taken within these intervals? With different pathways induce different emotions. We have learned that limb movements tend to be peripheral and that joint movements tend to be transversal. So what about facial movements? Here I got the goals to embody the inherent chorotic features of the A scale and the primary scale. So namely the transversal pathways of the A scale and the peripheral pathways of 6 curves of the primary scale. So primary scale being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 12. And so now I'd like to invite them both again so that you could compare the live demonstration of Trishula demonstrating the A scale, so transversal. Lorena will be demonstrating the primary scale. And I also have a video of Lorena doing central pathways. So, from the observation, I gathered that different pathways, like intervals, do not induce different emotions. However, it does have a slight indication of the emotional intensity at the instant. So what I said just now was that the different pathways have a slight indication of emotional intensity at the instant. So I consolidated my thoughts based on this theory from Ekman and Friesen's field of emotion research regarding the possibility of emotion without expression depending on the intensity of emotion. It can be seen that central pathways exude a more casual air of thought within the expressions, whereas peripheral, if you don't mind just continuing, suggests a deeper state of preoccupation. It could be possible. So the central pathways exude a more casual air of thought, whereas peripheral shows a deeper state of occupation in terms of their thinking. So it could be possible that the pathways taken in the face suggest one's personality. In addition, there's this quote that I found which really suggests links between the... So I found the second quote that really suggests links between the dynamics within facial expression and the resultant emotions conveyed. However, I decided not to venture towards this direction of eukinetics because this is essentially a corrective investigation. So the face as a component of emotion. From my study so far, it cannot be denied that the face can surely provide important information about emotion. This quote simply gives an incentive for further research to be conducted in specified movements in the face in hopes of objectifying the full range of facial expressions that can be made. However, it is only one of many tools and should never be used as a gold standard of emotion. The face is more a component of emotion, not the center of study of human experiencing an emotion. This leads to the second part of my investigation, which is its relation to body language as means of expression. So Lim states that emotions are actually shown primarily on the face, not the body. What body language can convey is how that emotion is being dealt with. And the term body language comprises posture and gesture. And early studies conducted by Ekman suggested that while the face is the most effective channel for expressing specific emotions, the posture provided more information about the gross effect. That is, the general information about the emotional state, such as degree of arousal or tenseness, but does not allow to determine the specific emotional state. From these quotes, I summarized that the face is a channel for expressing specific emotions. The posture provides more information about the emotional state, and gesture acts as a decorative layer in facilitating verbal communication. As individual components, as you could see here, they are, thank you. I just got them to put their face, posture, and gesture in locations, but just completely isolated. And you could see very clearly that they bear no relation towards one another, being separate. 5 minutes. I think I will move on to the performance first. So if you'd like to I've done a bit more research on the relations, but I may talk about it later if I have time. But I now present you a harmonically opposite movement phrase created based on the body language in fixed locations. So using the basis of my research alongside the use of proxemics and sound, I now present you a transformed version of this phrase.
With another man, but I'll lose some sleep on that, 'cause I've got you're beautiful, you're beautiful, you're beautiful, it's true. I saw your face in a crowded place, and I don't know. Cause I'll never be with you. Yes, she caught my eye as I walked by.
performance was a result of introducing layers of harmonic opposition. So interpersonal harmonic opposition between the girls, as can be seen in the first routine without being transformed, and then intrapersonal harmonic opposition between the face and body language, and also a second layer of intrapersonal facial harmonic opposition within the face. So from the performance, it cannot be denied that expressions in the face add a distinct layer of meaning to the physical language, bringing attention or intention towards the established body language. So there is a second part to my investigation, but I will just conclude here, and if you'd like, I can continue presenting on another day. But just as a conclusion, I'd just like to point out that at this point of my research, after doing all this, I just wonder if we could push the degree of deliberateness in facial expressions, challenging the kinetic possibilities of the face. As performers, movements of the body has been such a focus that facial expression is conventionally kept neutral or functional where there is allowance only for spontaneous reactions. What if we could actively break the natural affinities within our facial movements as well, creating inorganic facial movements more so in the context of our bodily movements? So Van Edwards stated that emotions not only cause facial expressions also cause emotions. Perhaps this research could sustain its encoding approach, which I have introduced, in a larger context to develop from the objective locational placing of facial parts to the resultant emotion harnessed. Thank you.